Hi, in today's video we'll be talking about Security Data Filter, which is a new security control tool introduced with the Xanadu version of ServiceNow. So what is a Security Data Filter? A Security Data Filter is a new security control available on the ServiceNow platform which works at the database level to restrict access to the data. So that means that whenever a user would basically load a form or would query using scripts, the SDF, the security data filter, would come in the picture and it would restrict data as per the SDF definition so that the user gets restricted access to the data. Now, before we dive into the instance to explore this functionality, let me bring up this mind map which I have created to show different aspects of the security data filter. So this is the mind map which I have put up to see the different aspects of the security data filter. Now, starting from the left side of the SDF, and starting with the topic SDF evaluation, is it a new functionality? Definitely it's a new functionality. It's a new functionality added to the platform, but it's not a new concept. We had the data filtration in the past, and SDF is a successor to that particular functionality. Now coming to the next option here, which is it's enabled by default on the platform. It's not like the data filtration, which came as a separate plugin. You have to go and install that plugin, and then the data filtration was available. But it's not the case with SDF. SDF comes by default with the platform. Now, talking about the SDF framework, it works at the database level with the help of the SQL query. All the filters which are defined for the SDF basically passed as a where clause in the SQL query, which goes to the ServiceNow database. Now coming to the comparative analysis here, it's basically to compare how it compares with the existing legacy tool like ACL and Query Business Tool. So I have not mentioned domain separation here because domain separation has got a specific use case. So domain separation is mainly meant for the environment where there's a need for multi-tenant data and business process separation, which is not the case here. Now, if I have to compare the SDF with the query business tool, the SDF is more declarative in the nature. That means it's non-scripted, it's more configurable. So you can go and configure the security attributes and the filters to define a security data filter. The second point related to SDF is the easy auditing with SDF. So you can go and access the SDF and see the filter condition. Also, you can refer security attribute audit log, which shows the auditing of the security attributes. The last point on the query BR comparison is the default glide record secure scope for SDF. So SDF works on the glide record secure. If your script is using the glide record method, then definitely SDF may get bypassed and it might show the data which you don't want to show using the SDF. So that is quite a possibility, but then if you compare it with Query Business Rule, yes, Query Business Rule works at both the glide record and the glide record secure level. Now, if you already know the scope which needs the SDF filter in it, then definitely you can change the glide record method to glide record secure, or you can also add a security data filter method with the glide record query. Okay, now let's compare the SDF with the ACL. So SDF is more secure in the sense that it does not show the aggregated data which might be available below the numerical columns, the counts and everything which comes down the column, while the ACL may leak that information to the user. The SDF has got configuration to show or not to show the UI messages for the user where the records are not returned by the security data filter, whereas in the ACLs, if the user does not have access to certain records, the user may just get some errors like the rows are removed due to security constraint, which is not a good user experience. Now coming to the last comparison of the SDF versus ACL. SDF, we know it works at the database level, and the ACL, it works at the application layer. So what's the difference? So with SDF, the queries are sent to the database and then database returns only restricted amount of data to the user. Whereas in ACL, the entire data is loaded on the application and then ACL controls which data to be shown to the user or not based on the ACL conditions. Now coming to the right hand side of the SDF mind map, let's start with the execution sequence. So if you see the execution sequence of the SDF versus other tools, other security control tools, you can see that Query business rule definitely is the first one which gets executed. SDF is the second one, and then followed by table ACLs, which could be the row ACL and the field ACLs. Next, risk factors. So let's understand what's the risk factor with the SDF. If you're using any of the fields which are not indexed in the filtration or in the condition of SDF, definitely it would impact the performance of the SDF. Expensive operators like contains and like should not be used with the data filtration because that consumes a lot of data query time and should be avoided. Now, coming to the best practices with SDF, definitely as per the architecture strategy, it has to be 80-20 rule with the implementation of security data filter. So 80% with SDF and 20% with other tools like ACLs or query business rule. So developing a security-based solution, we need to keep this 80-20 rule in mind. So try to accomplish more with SDFs, and remaining complexity could be handled using the ACLs. Now coming to the index part, fields needs to be indexed if they are used in the SDFs. Test with production volume, definitely that would give you a glimpse of the performance of the SDF on the production data. Also, use SDF diagnostic tool when you're building this functionality or when you're building a solution on the SDF. Next, we'll dive into the instance to implement few use cases and see how we can leverage security data filter and use it for the business requirements. Okay, we are on the PDI now, and we would go to the system security application module. And under system security, you can see we have got the security data filter and security attributes. Keep this security attribute module in mind because we would be leveraging this for the security data filter. Okay, now let's go to the security data filter and try to understand how we can configure it. And then we would go and check the different use case scenarios. So I click on the security data filter, and I get a list of all the existing security data filter here. Now you can see here there is no new button because we need to elevate our privileges to work with SDF. So I click on security admin, click on update. So we got the new button here now. Click on the new button. And we got the security data filter. Now let's understand the configuration here on this page. So first on the top, we have the table name. So this is the table on which the security data filter would get applied to. So this is the table on the top here. And then you have the application scope on the right hand side. Then you have the active checkbox, and then you have the show in UI. Now I would like to leave it because I don't want users to see no records found due to security constraint error on their page. So I would move down to the description, wherein which I would put the description of the SDF. And then we have three different options down below: mode, filter, and security attribute conditions. And these are the three main things about the SDF. So let's understand them one by one. So the first thing which I would pick up from these three is the security attribute condition, because this is the main thing. So whenever a SDF is applied, it basically executes the security attribute condition first. And based on the output and based on the mode selected, it would do the filter or it would not do the filter. So that's how the SDF works. So after security attribute condition, let's understand the mode. So the mode has got two options. First, filter if security attribute conditions are met. So that means do the filter, that means apply this filter if the security attribute conditions return true. If not, do not apply the filter. Now let's go to the second option. The second option says filter unless security attribute condition is met. So that means filter anyways until the security attribute condition is met. So that means if the security attribute condition returns true, then do not apply the filter, else apply the filter. So it's kind of opposite to the first option. So we talked about the security attribute condition, we talked about the mode, and the next is the filter. So filter is nothing but the condition which you want to apply on the data. So it's just the conditions and an or clause which you would like to put on the data. And which data? It's the table data which is selected on the top. Now let's try to pick up some use cases. So I've got the HR module installed on this PDI. and we would try to find a use case on the HRSD. Since HR is a sensitive data, definitely the HR data should be restricted to the owner of the data, right? So that means the HR cases which gets generated should have visibility control in a sense that only the users who have submitted the HR cases should be able to see the data, or the agents who are working on those HR cases should see the data, right? That makes perfect sense. So let's go to the HR module and see what kind of data we have. So I'm on the HR module. I'll go to all, and we can see we have got 3 HR cases here. Now I have created these HR cases for the demo purpose. Now if you see on the top, we have this HR case which is open for system administrator. So definitely the ask is that nobody else should see this HR case apart from the open for person. Similarly, for the second and the third, it should be visible to only the open for or anybody from the assignment group, right? So these are the HR agents who would be working on these HR cases. And also, we want to show HR admins all the data which is available in the HR case table, right? Because HR admins would like to see all of them. So let's go to the system security and click on new. Now there's one thing here. So when I clicked on new, I can see that the SDF has been opened in the application scope of global, and our HR data sits in the HR scope. So it makes perfect sense that we need to first change the scope so that our SDF could sit in the same scope where the data is. So for that, I would go to the application picker here and then select the human resource code, because the HR case data sits in the SNHR code table, and SNHR code table is part of the scope application human resource core. So I would change the scope to human resource core. So after I have changed the application scope, I can see that the application scope has been changed here on the SDF. Now I would go and pick up the SNHR core case table. So this is our table here. So this is our use case. Okay, now the main thing. Which mode to choose? Okay, now our ask is that we need to show the data to HR admins, right? So that means if this security attribute returns true, I should not be running this filter. And for that condition, it makes perfect sense that we use the filter unless security attribute condition here. So generally, if there is no HR admin, definitely you put up the filter so the data gets restricted as per the owner of the data. But if the HR admin user logs in, they should be able to see all the data. So we would go and find out if we have a security attribute which checks for the HR admin roles. So this is not the one, this is not the one. So I think we'll have to create a custom one. So I can create the security attribute right from here, or I can go to the security attribute module and do it from there. I would go to the security attribute. So you can see here, so this particular table, it contains all the security attributes. And this is a very important table because these security attributes are not only used by the security data filter, but it is also used by ACLs. It's also used by the Zero Trust. It is also used by the MFA. You name it. This is a very important part of the security. So the security attributes which comes out of the box or which you defined is reusable and used across different security controls on the platform. We want the security attribute which checks whether the user's role is SNHR core admin, right? And remember, we are still in the application scope human resource. So I would create a security attribute inside this application scope. So I'll click on new. So I'll put something like this is HR admin. You should auto populate. And then there are different type of security attributes. And the most common is the compound type, because it would give me list of other security attributes which I can leverage for this particular attribute condition. There are other options also in the security attribute, like the integer, list, string. So integer would bring out a numeric value, list would have multiple values output, string would give the string output, and then you have the Boolean type true and false output. So depending on your scenario, you can use a different type of security attributes along with the lookup table and lookup table column name here. You can also use script to refer these values. But for this example, I would pick up the compound type, which is the most commonly used and super easy to use. So I would pick up the, let me see if we have a role type. There you go. So I've picked up the role here, and I would check if I have SNHR core. So we can see the HR admin role here. So this is my security attribute. So I'll go and submit this. And now we know that this is available as one of the security attribute inside the security attribute table. So the next step is security data filter. So we'll go to the security data filter and try to create one. So we are in human resource. I'll pick up the name here. SNHR core case. So as we discussed earlier, so I would go and pick up the filter unless, because by default I want to put up a filter and then I want to relax it when we have the HR admin, right? And our filter here would be open for is dynamic me, or who else can see the data is the assigned group, right? The HR agents. So I would go assignment group is dynamic, one of my group. So I think this pretty much would restrict the data to the data owners, like the HR cases, and they are open for whom, and the assignment group. Next, we would pick up the security attributes. So this is the one which we created. You can see the SNHR core scope here. So I would select this, cross verify that this is the one which we created. So I think we are good here. So everything done, click on submit. Now let's see how it restricts the data. So we'll go to the home, all. Okay, interesting. We can still see all the data here. Ideally, I would have expected that it would show only sysadmin, but it is showing all the data. So right now we have logged in using sysadmin, right? And we have only one HR case for sysadmin, but it is still showing all the HR cases. And I think this is happening because by default, out of the box, you get HR admin role under the admin role. So we can cross check that. So we are in the user account of user admin. Now, if I try to find the admin role, yes. So the admin role has got the SNHR core admin role also. And that's the reason the admin has got access to all the records. But in a real implementation, after the HR is implemented, normally the SNHR core admin is taken away from the admin role because admins should not have access to the HR data from process point of view. For this demo, I would not take the SNHR core admin away from admin. We can use some other users to see whether the SDF has been implemented and it's working as expected. So let's go back to the HR case listing. Now from this list, let's pick up one of the user here. Let's pick up Abraham Lincoln. So I would impersonate Abraham. And if I do the HR cases listing, there you go. So you can see that the SDF has been implemented and it's active. So it's filtering the data. You don't see any error message or anything because we have not selected that UI message, right? So there is no error. The user is able to see only the data which is relevant to them. So any other data visibility is controlled. And that's what we wanted to achieve, right? Now let's go back and check with some other users. Now let's see what we have in the HR tier 1 group. So in the HR tier 1 group, we have able tutor. So all the HR cases which are assigned to the HR tier 1 group are visible to the user able tutor, and we'll test that. So we would impersonate able tutor, and able tutor should have visibility to 2 of the HR cases as per the data which we have for this demo. Right. So as expected, able tutor has got access to 2 of them because able tutor is part of the HR tier 1 group. We can also check David Miller. So David has got access to his HR case only. Now let's try to find any other use case using which we can use the other mode of the SDF, right? So let's go to sysuser. So we are on the users table now, and we would sanitize this data because for HR to work efficiently, the HR data should be accurate and it should not have any wrong email address which might trigger wrong notification to unwanted recipient, right? So to implement or to restrict or to sanitize the user data, we can do a filtration on the right domain of the users, right email domain of the users. So how do we do that? So for example, at example.com is the right domain for the org. So all the users from this domain are basically the employee of the organization, and the HR do not want to communicate to anybody else outside the organization. So in that case, we need to make sure that HR data uses only the valid accounts or only the accounts which has the valid email domains. So we have got a total of 633 users. Now, if we put up the filter to sanitize the data, we are getting 610. So this filter would sanitize the data. Now I want to implement the SDF in a way that it would always show only the sanitized and valid data, user data, everywhere. Go to the security data filter again. But again, before I create the SDF, I would change my domain because user is in the global domain. So I would prefer to be in the global domain. So I'm in the global domain now, and I would click on new. I'll pick up this is user table. Show users with valid email domain. So we would choose the filter if mode and go to the security because we want this filter to be active throughout all different situations, right? So for that, I would use the always security attribute, which always returns true. Now I would go and put up the filter. So the filter is email ends with. So now with this SDF, we would always get this filter applied. That means it would show only 610 records on the user table from wherever you access. So let's submit this. and go to sys user table. There you go. So you can see that it has filtered. We have not specified any filter here. It's on the all, but it has filtered the unwanted email IDs from the user listing. If I click on all and just try to open one of the HR cases. Now, if I try to change the subject person here, so you would not get any account which is not a valid domain. Again, there is one account which is not shown here. That could be because of the filter which is added here. So we can cross check that. So I'll pick this up. So I have applied that URL on the browser tab and I can see 609, but it's because of that filter. So if we remove that filter, so if I remove this filter, you can see we are getting 610. So from wherever you open the lookup for the user, you would get the filtered data, which is restricted by the SDF we just created. Next, which I want to pick up is the SDF diagnostic tool, which comes out of the box by default with the SDF. So for that, we would go to system property and try to enable it if it's already not enabled. So let's go to So this is the system property which we are trying to look for. So normally you would get the system property in the sys properties table. In case you don't get this, I would suggest to create it manually. So you can create this property with this name. So let me open it. So you can create a property with this particular name of type true and false and set the value to true. So once you do that, it would enable the SDF diagnostic tool on the SDF page. So let's go to the SDF page. Now we can see that this is already set to true. So we would go to the security data filter, pick up any of them. And down below under the related links, you can see analyze performance. And this is the tool I was talking about. So once you enable that system property, this link would appear here. And then you can use this to analyze the performance of the security data filter. And it's a best practice because you would definitely not want a SDF solution which is ranked as high in performance. So after you run this analyzer, if it says that the performance is under low to medium, I think it's safe to go ahead with that solution. But if it is put under the high category, and that would happen if you use operators like contains, like, you dot walk, then the solution might really become complex and it would not be advisable to implement it through SDF. So let's click on the analyze performance. So I'll look for the data filter. So once I pick up my data filter, it would populate the table information and whatever related active data filters. In the show advanced, I can also add some unqueried query to my filter and the performance summary would appear down below. So let's do it for one of the SDF we created. So this is the one which we created, right? So I've selected it. It has populated the table. There is no related active data filters, so it's 0. And that's it, I think. So I'll click on analyze query performance. It shows the performance summary as low, which is it's fine to go with this SDF. So we can use this for data segregation or data visibility control. You can also scroll down and see the median query time for this particular filter. You can also see the mean query time, and also you can get the max and min time for the query. So this tool is quite handy. I would suggest you use it when you are implementing any solution on SDF. I think this pretty much covers everything which I wanted to cover in this session. I hope you learned something new from this session. See you next with another video. Keep learning and keep growing. Thank you very much.